Thank you for your question. The work of the probation services is essential for the safety of Londoners, and it's increasingly clear that the public have been severely let down by the government's decision to privatise this vital public service. Many people, me included when I was the Shadow Justice Secretary, joined experienced probation staff in warning the government that their ideological drive towards privatisation was reckless risk-taking with public safety. An underperforming community rehabilitation company, the CRC, means that offenders are not being properly rehabilitated, which means more crime for the police to deal with, increased harm to victims, and an additional financial burden for London. The findings of the inspection of London Probation Service in 2016 by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation was deeply alarming and showed that London's probation service was simply not working. I'm continuing to call for greater resourcing and responsibility to ensure these services are fit for purpose and drive down reoffending. The latest inspection of the CRC by Her Majesty's Inspector of Probation was published on the 8th of March. It did not paint a picture of it being perfect, but it did paint a picture of improvement in terms of performance. However, these improvements are from a very low baseline of 2016.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I would take it from that you would agree with me that this is something that should be a government or a state function and not a private one. I think it is extraordinary that we've reached a situation where it's been half privatised and yet at the same time the government's ended up bailing them out. It is disastrous. Back in 2016, when you were commenting on that original report, you said that you would continue to make the case to government for devolution of probation to City Hall. And I wondered how have you put that case in, the past 14 months?
Thanks for your question. I mean, so I met recently, it's fortuitous your question, the Lord Chancellor, the Justice Secretary, I think last week, to discuss the issue of devolution and where we go from here. The bad news is the contracts the government signed with these companies are for a number of years. And so the government, I think the current CRC contract ends in 2022. And so in the meantime, the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime meets regularly with the company that have got the contract, MTC Novo. The question comes whether we, with the government or by ourselves, are in charge of commissioning the CRC contract. But even that wouldn't apply for post-2022. And you and I are worried about what happens now. And so, and by the way, we warned the government of this. I mean, it's a classic case of, we warned them, long contracts, real problem, even on payment by results. The key thing now, I think, is in the meantime to work with the company that's got the contract for them to improve their game. That means, I'm afraid, the government, again, bailing out a private company, because one of the issues is lack of resources. Skilled, experienced, dedicated probation staff leaving the service, and that's a real challenge. We can do our bit in relation to helping the government on electronic monitoring, female offending, dealing with persistent offenders. But you're right, unless there's a real change from the government, in the short term, there's not a lot we can do as London government, which is frustrating for us, because as I said in my answer, if somebody's not rehabilitated, it means they commit another offence. We all suffer.
Oh, exactly, but also given that we've got a rise in violent crime at the moment, this is even more important. I'm very, very alarmed. I wonder whether you could comment, Mr. Mayor, to hear that actually as of this month, the private company started co-running nighttime supervision in probation hostels. And the private companies have been allowed to employ unvetted staff for the first 2 months of the contract. And Unison, I think, has said that this is gambling with public safety. What do you actually understand by unvetted staff, first of all? And what is your comment on that?
Well, I wonder, Mr. Mayor, whether or not that's in your purview.
Well, I think
he's asking you, what do you understand by something which the GLA isn't responsible for?
Well, I think, if I understood it correctly, I think Mr. Limmer was bearing in mind my responsibility for safety.
Okay.
I think he was alluding to it.
Unvetted staff in hostels in London. Yeah.
Yes.
So, because it does affect us all. I mean, the problem is this. I mean, the reason why it's so frustrating the way the government's botched the probation contracts is all of us are affected by it. And so you can't silo the criminal justice system, the criminal justice service. And so the consequence could be companies taking on staff who haven't had the proper checks done, aren't properly experienced, not sure of the training they receive, forget on the work training, being in charge of people who could be vulnerable but also could be a risk. That should be a source of concern for us. And this is why, by the way, this is not, neither you or I come into this for ideological reasons. I suspect we come probably different in relation to the spectrum of nationalisation versus privatisation. We come at it on pragmatic basis. We're saying, look, the consequence is Londoners' safety. And that's why it beggars belief, in the interest of ideology, a Justice Secretary goes down this road, and my prediction, the taxpayer will pick up the pieces, because the way it's been run now for profit is not the way to run a criminal justice system.
Well, I mean, they already have been picking up the pieces from what I can see with these companies. But, I mean, it's not necessarily actually just a pragmatic thing in the sense that, you know, to an extent it is ideological, if I may say, in the sense that some things we think government should do, you know, and the market can't handle everything. Neither should it.
It's good to see your conversion, Peter.
No, it's always been the position, you know, as opposed to these guys. But could I just therefore just end by asking again, this main point about devolving, I know you say that there are contracts that go up to 2020, I totally understand that, but the point has really got to be consistently made all the way along, that actually this should be the end result, you know, that we've lumbered with these things, but this should be the end result, that we should handle probation. You being in charge of the police, you know, it should be under you too. Yeah,
can I say on that, Chair, I think the Assembly member is, and this will be recorded, I'm sure, absolutely right on this issue in relation to this, because it's not joined up. So we're in charge of policing to an extent in London, but then it leaves us when it comes to the prosecution, the courts, and it's not with us again when it comes to rehabilitation. Who picks up the pieces? It's the police. And so that's why my message to the Lord Chancellor, I'm not being indiscreet because these meetings should be done in private, but this bit is no state secret, is the more devolution to London, the more devolution to those nearer where decisions are taken, I think the better the outcome. On a whole host of issues, sometimes you're right, you know, it's done actually for reasons of sensibleness. Actually, the state should be the person responsible for the safety of its citizens, should be the person responsible for the prosecution of those responsible for a crime. The state should be the people responsible for rehabilitating and punishing those guilty of a crime as well. But also the state should be those who make sure there's a proper care given to those who either leave custody or those who've been given a sentence by a judge that needs and requires supervision. And I don't think this is something that people should make a profit from. The profit should be greater public safety, not dividends to shareholders.
Well, thank you for that comprehensive answer.